Today's video, we're going to talk about how to improve PPC lead quality through lead analysis using your data to skyrocket your ROI. What I'm talking about here in terms of lead analysis is simply looking at the leads that you are getting that are quality versus the ones that you are getting that are not quality, and then identifying the differences between the two. And I'm not talking about simplistic things like their income or their age, which in and itself is very, very useful, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot more you can learn using these brand new third-party data sources that are popping up out of nowhere, which gives people a massive edge with their advertising because they can now surgically cut through all the nonsense out there on the market and find that 5 or 10% of the whales in their market and then specifically go after them and then just get rid of targeting everybody else. And for that matter, especially in B2B service markets, the results are in figuring out where the 5 to 10% is in your market that has all the money, willing to spend a lot, don't care about pricing so much, and are ready to go now. And your data is your key to it. You cannot get there without data. And you either have to take your data that you have from your in-house data that you already have, or you have to acquire it, one or the other. In either case, you should be getting the data because it's worth it. You can build a multi-million-dollar campaign off the backs of your data alone using the information in this video. I'm going to explain also how to actually use this data with a practical case study in the drug rehab space, where we got rid of people who in that particular space, you got people with health insurance, you got people without it. How do we get rid of people that don't have health insurance utilizing our data? I'm going to explain exactly how we did it in that particular case, and then also how much of a difference this made on our results as soon as we started using this data to our advantage. Stay to the end of the video for this as well. So with that said, getting into the content, this overall so-called lead analysis system that I've developed at our firm, and frankly other people are using it, they just don't talk about it, is as follows. It's 3 overall steps that you go through to follow here. One of which is, if you have been in business for a while, track your leads, but even if you don't track your leads, what you want to do is you want to gather what we know in the marketing space or call first-party data. You get all the email addresses or phone numbers or physical addresses or IP addresses of the users who have been a client of yours. If you want ideal clients of yours or customers of yours that you've had in the past versus the ones that were crappy, and ideally you gotta have at least 1,000 of each in order to do the strategy worth a damn. And if you don't, there's an alternative here that I'm gonna give you here. But ideally, you have that data, and you got to have, again, their IP addresses or their email addresses or the phone numbers, one of the things that I mentioned there, in order to follow through with this plan, basically. Buyers versus non-buyers, of which, by the way, if you are going to do this and take this all the way, what I would recommend is analyzing all the people who just simply hit your website and compare those people that never turn into a purchase or a customer of yours, and compare that to the customers that you have that are the ideal customer. That's your ultimate best way to do this, because that actually gets you people that are the worst prospects that you've paid for in the past and the best prospects of all. So you can really see what the true differences are between these two groups of people. I'll explain a little bit more how to do that in a minute. So with that said, once you have your data, step 2 is you are trying to identify differences in that data. What are the traits that specifically make up the people that are buyers versus non-buyers? And so you can utilize this to basically steer your campaigns with. I've talked about many times on this channel before about so-called offline conversion tracking, where you feed data to Google, you feed data to Facebook/Meta, you feed it to LinkedIn, wherever you're on these mainstream advertising platforms you're advertising, and the data that these ad platforms get about who buys from you because when somebody does buy from the leads that you're generating, you give that information to the ad system, they are going to do their own lead analysis on their end. The problem is they're going to do it way slower than what you can just easily do on your own with your own first-party data that you have access to already, and in general, because Google, Facebook, they want to spend your money. So they're going to go after people that you wouldn't want to go after unless you explicitly say, stop, do not go after these people that I don't want anymore, and very explicitly tell them that. But with that said, there is a software called Taz, is one data provider that I would recommend. You are providing them the email address list of the buyers versus the non-buyers, or the IP addresses or what have you, and then they're going to give you lots and lots of insights on the differences between those two groups of people. Then, once you have those insights, you're going to downgrade the audiences in your ad accounts that don't match that typical best customer profile that you're typically dealing with that you want more of in the future. You may find out that for whatever quirky reason, that people who buy home renovation services, they don't eat fast food, or they like going to church or whatever. And then in your Google ad account, you could actually, at least if you're running manual campaigns or manual CPC campaigns, you could add audiences to your campaigns on search, on shopping campaigns. You could also do this on display campaigns, YouTube campaigns, and of which you add these audiences, fast food eater, church goer, like this, and you could actually tell the ad system there, I want to pay more per click or less per click based upon the person that I'm advertising to that are typing in these keywords or going to these key websites. I want to do more or less of it. And your typical customer goes to church at a 6x multiplier than somebody who doesn't go to church. They buy from you 6 times less likely. You could actually do a 600% bid adjustment on anybody who goes to church that also searches for your keywords or go to a particular website that you're advertising on through the Google Display Network, and vice versa for stuff that negatively correlates with customers that typically buy from you. That is, if somebody like that eats fast food, it appears through the data that Claritas is going to give you, which you can Google Claritas and find them. If you find out fast food eaters, they eat fast food, they're 3 times less likely to buy from you, then you can put a negative 300% bid adjustment on that, if you will. This is specifically what I'm talking about. And then as it comes to Facebook itself and LinkedIn, by the way, you are going to add negative interests and negative demographics traits, which Claritas is going to tell you interests, behaviors, psychographic traits. They're going to tell you demographic traits, firmographic traits. They give you hundreds of thousands of data points in the future that they're going to have. They're going to be able to give you on the US public that they keep on everybody. And so when you give them the people that are on your email list, they can tell you everything about these people. And that's how you utilize the data to make your campaigns a lot more efficient. So a lot of people, when they start advertising and doing lead generation, they expect their stuff to work right away. Realistically, yes, if you're doing Google search ads, it's pretty easy to get results right away because these people are already raising their hand and saying, yeah, I want to buy from you. But if you're going to start going after people that are even somewhat lukewarm, it's very hard to make money right away because you got to find the 5 to 10% of the market that actually buys. That because you'll get a lot of people flirting with the idea of buying, but they're not real buyers, so to say. And also, there's just a lot of people, every time somebody sees an ad that's not an interested prospect, that costs you money because your click-through rate goes down. And then if your click-through rate goes down, your cost per click goes up. So your goal is to figure out how to narrow down your targeting enough that you just simply get to where the results are, and then now you're just going to make money from now on. So this data allows you to do it a lot quicker than uploading your sales to the ad platform and just letting the system correct on their own. You could put hard changes in place that'll just immediately cut out certain interests, behaviors, so on and so forth, that are going to make the ads more efficient moving forward. And if you've been in business for, let's say, 5 or 10 years already, you've got all the data that you need to be able to do this already. You just got to go to Claritas, give them your data, let them tell you how to modify your campaigns that you're running today, and see your campaigns get 2, 3, 5, 10 times as profitable as what they were before because you're now advertising to 2, 5, 10 times less people, and you just got rid of all the people that don't buy. So that's how it works. It's very simple in execution. The question though is, do you actually have the data to do this? If you don't have data, then you got to do it the old-fashioned way, which is you advertise and you collect the data, and then you utilize the data to your fullest ability to cut out all the waste as quickly as still as you possibly can. With that said, no matter, even if you have the first-party data, you've given the data to Claritas, and they're telling you everything, you're still going to have some trial and error with your campaigns. You know, with search campaigns, for instance, there's going to be certain keywords that don't work and you got to get rid of them and so forth. But it's going to get rid of 80% of the learning that you normally would have to do to find the 5 or 10% of market out there that you actually want to tap into and where it's profitable for you to tap into. If you don't have any first-party data at all, then you just simply advertise and you do, or on any existing campaigns that you have or campaigns that you set up that are new, you do extra audience segmentation on your accounts. Google, like I was mentioning before, you can add audiences with the manual bidding campaign at least. Otherwise, with smart bidding, it just ignores the audiences essentially, even though you're trying to promote certain audiences more or less with bid adjustments. You're going to add the segmentation in there. So I've had campaigns where I wanted to get more efficient, where I would add 500 audiences to my search campaign. And I would just wait and I would watch how the data ended up. Of the people that are turning into a qualified lead, which traits do they have? What do they not have? And then I was able to then downgrade or upgrade my bids accordingly based upon that data. I was able to do this in addition to the demographics data I was getting itself. And then just given that Google's going to be slower to optimize on their end because they don't want to cut your spend right away because they want you to spend more, I'm right away going to have the most data to make quick cuts in my campaign and get a lot more efficiency from my campaign short term so I don't run out of money before the campaign is at break even and I'm not out of the game essentially. With Facebook, you do the same kind of deal though, but it's done indirectly. So instead of having one lookalikes audience campaign that you're running, run 5 campaigns, one of which targets people that you exclude fast food eaters, one campaign where you exclude people who like going to church, and so forth. And then you see or watch what is the ROI difference from each one individually. And this is something I would recommend, by the way, after you've gotten your offer tested, your ad copy, you can't really improve it much more, or that is at least found the structure of the ad that typically works the best. Once you've gotten to that, past that stage, that's the time when you start getting into this little level of audience segmentation. Granted, again, Facebook is going to try to do this same thing on their end, on the back end or internally, but it's going to be slow. Whereas you can just do your own tests and think of things that are going to be more logical itself, even query your own customer base and find out what they like, what they don't like. And then as a result of that, use that data to segment out your campaigns and your traffic and then just see which works the best. I would recommend doing like no more than 5 different campaigns and 5 different audiences that you've excluded. Once you find the 1 or 2 of those that are really dogs, you get rid of those, you replace them with 1 or 2 more, you find out the worst performing 1 or 2 out of those that are left, and you do it again. And then ultimately, you use what you learn to exclude on your main primary campaign that you're running, that's still a separate campaign, and you add more and more and more exclusions to it. And that's typically how I set it up. But for that matter, in addition to this, you need to set up full funnel tracking so that you can actually track inside your ad account whether the lead came in, but also whether the lead bought, or at least was it qualified, so that when you run this experiment, you're actually going to be able to know what is the cost per qualified lead or cost per sale, not just cost per lead, because that's irrelevant, for each one of these audience segments that you have itself that you're testing. Then you're going to run a report on each audience segment individually that you've broken out, find out the dogs in there, and then exclude them from your primary campaign like I was mentioning before. So that's your overall alternative process if you are going to do lead analysis or lead level analysis for your brand to increase the ROI or skyrocket the ROI for your Facebook campaigns, LinkedIn campaigns, Google ad campaigns that you're running. For that matter, that is your 2 methods. Now, I've got a case study where I'm going to go over in detail here what you can do and how you can utilize this to your advantage. There's so many markets where this would be extremely useful, but almost nobody wants to do it or knows about doing it, which means in your market that you're in, your niche, it's very unlikely nobody in your space is doing it at all, unless it's in a big money niche. And then maybe 1 or 2 guys are doing it, but not everybody else. So you still have, it's always going to give you an edge. You need to be able to do this, either one method or the other, so you have that edge, given that most people that I interact with through this channel, through my Discord group, through my agency, they all think ads are just like an instant get-rich-quick scheme. That can't blame them because they don't know how advertising truly works. Advertising takes trial and error. You got to be able to find out who your customer is. If you don't know who it is, you got to figure it out. People think, oh, well, I sell pottery wheels. It's everybody who would want a pottery wheel. No, it's not. There's certain people who make pottery that that's your customer. There's 10% of the market that's your customer. You got to find out who that is. Furthermore, of the people who think they want pottery wheels, there's only so many of those people, 10% of those, who actually, when push comes to shove, will actually buy one. So you got really, out of the total universe of people that could potentially maybe buy a pottery wheel, there's 1% of it that you actually want at the end of the day. They have a certain age bracket that you're going after, a certain income bracket that you're going after. They have certain traits or behaviors, and you got to figure all this stuff out. And if it were so easy to run ads, you just turn on an ad and then boom, your business explodes. Everybody in your space would have done it already. Everybody knows what Facebook ads is. Everybody knows what Google ads is. What are you doing that's different? Well, you are going to be the one that says, yes, it's not going to make money at first, what I'm doing, but I'm going to gather the data that I need that tells me where my buyer is, and then I'm going to drill down into it, and then I'm going to make money from that point forward. If you're in a market with super high demand and low competition, you don't need any of this. What you're saying here is irrelevant, and it would be. But if you're in a very competitive market, like you're selling promo products, you are trying to sell consulting services, there's such a huge difference in one type of buyer and another type of buyer in that market. There's no other choice that you have. You have to figure out this stuff about your buyer, your market. You're just never going to make your ad campaigns work. But once you figure it out, it's smooth sailing from then on out. So you might spend the first 6-12 months in your company running ads, just figuring out what I'm telling you here. But then you know it. And then for the next 10-20 years, you got it. And you're going to have a profitable ad campaign running for your business. You just can't go into it with all this glee thinking, I don't have to know anything besides how to set up an ad and I'm done. Because that, I can tell you, I've got 20 years of experience doing this. That happens less than 10% of the time. And it's in a market where there's basically no competition already. Otherwise, with all the time running their campaigns that they have on you by default, they've got a massive advantage on you. And the only way you're going to overtake them is having a better funnel and being more diligent in using the data that you have better or more than they are, which even the big boys don't use the data. A lot of them are they've been in it so long. Eventually they got to where they're at just through brute trial and error. But that said, this case study, I want to go over in the drug rehab space, how we utilize this exact same system to make a lot more money from our ad campaigns on just simple Google search ads. Forget about Facebook, forget about any other platforms or display ads or anything else, where it also even matters more for that matter. Before I do, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you absolutely should. I've got the best information on this channel about how to make money with ads. I've also got a great blog on my site at guaranteedppc.com/blog, where I document the strategies that I use to guarantee our clients results at our ad campaign. If you haven't checked that out yet, you absolutely should. Beyond that, I also got a Discord group that is very good. You can reach out to me through my Discord group. Link is in the description. As is, you can always leave me a comment section. Anything you have a question about or any marketing related question, if you leave me a comment in the comment section, I'll get back to you. You also can reach out to me through my site if you would like coaching or consulting. You can find me at guaranteedppc.com for that. I also do full-on management services. I manage your ads and charge when the results are there up front, which no other agency does. I also have ad templates available. So if you are in a market that we've been in before, we can tell you the winning ads, landing pages, all of it that work for your niche market. Copy paste all the ads that we've got that work for your market in another city or country that you're in, and get the same results that our client has had. And there's no conflict of interest there since you're in a different part of the world, different part of the country, and you can use it for yourself, of which I've got hundreds of these templates, by the way, and I can tell you the results with it up front that you would actually get. So with that said, the case study here in the drug rehab space, if you're in this space, and I've been in this space for a long time, one of basically the number one issue that you have, once you understand the basics of how to put a decent landing page together, ad campaign and so forth, is how do you get people that have good insurance? Because almost nobody can afford a $30,000 drug rehab stay on their own without insurance. They either want to pay via insurance or they want to pay via Medicaid or Medicare. And the way that business works is, yes, Medicaid will pay, but they pay less and they pay slower, and it's basically, it sucks. Nobody wants these leads, even though they'll take them technically. Some places won't take them at all, but a lot of places will still take them begrudgingly. Anyway, the goal in that market is always, how do you get good insurance people? Because that's the only reliable way you're going to close somebody is when they have good insurance, because it's too much. And that's where the money is, so to say. If you run regular search ads with no lead filtering system in place, you're going to get 80 to 90% of people who want to have Medicaid, because there's way more people that have Medicaid in that market. Of course, poorer people do drugs at a higher rate, and that's what you're going to get. There's 10% of the market that has great insurance, or their parents have great insurance, that everybody's after. For that matter, everybody's trying to figure out how to get to that 10%. The real way you get there partially is you do income targeting, but income targeting isn't everything, because income targeting with these ad platforms, Google, Facebook, and so forth, it's all done on a zip code level. So they're going to take the average income of a zip code and assume everybody in that zip code is that income, which obviously isn't the case. There's a bunch of poor people within a higher income zip code. Absolutely. That helps a little bit, but certainly not nearly enough. Where the magic comes in is where you can identify individual traits that normally poor people have that would have the Medicaid that you can then exclude from your campaigns. And that's exactly what we did in this market. Just a few, for example here, NASCAR, coupons, fast food. All of these are traits that people that have lower income would have individually. When you're talking about audience targeting on Google, it's not done on a broad basis, it's done on an individual basis, whereas the income targeting option itself is done on a broad basis at a zip code level, like I was mentioning before. So it's a lot more precise. Our cost per qualified for this guy that we were working with in South Dakota went from $790 cost per qualified with insurance, which is quite high, to just $214. Once we set up our campaigns, instead of using smart bidding, which essentially would go after people that were getting a cheaper cost per lead, given that it was going to take forever to get enough qualified people with insurance to train the algorithm, that we just switched back to manual bidding. We went after, and we, on the audience level, reduced our bid for these audiences. It was these three and more. And then got our cost per qualified down less than 75% of what we started with, just by doing and executing on the data that we had from the rehab and the first party data through the data service. Claire does how you should do it also, that I mentioned you should do it as well. So that gives you your case study and shows you what's possible with this if you want to do it. Ultimately, regardless of using the third-party data sources, which I would highly still recommend, you can get a lot done just by utilizing the data inside your ad account to your advantage. Google also, by the way, will give you data on your converters in the audience menu under Insights. That's something else you could consider looking at. But one way or another, if you're not getting the results you want today, it's simply because you have not gathered enough data for you to get the results that you actually want. That is the ROI/ROAS that you want. It's simply there waiting for you once you figure out exactly where you need to be targeting. And until you do that, you're never going to be successful. Hopefully that made sense to you. I'll see you on the next one. If you want to see another video, click here. It is one of my best ones.